Hey guys, First Regardsman here, and I'll be talking about every single class in Space Marine 2 Patch 14 for hard strats and operations and tier listing them. And now, a couple classes got some changes to them. The biggest one here is, of course, the Tactical. His Auspex scan no longer buffs up the burn damage, like that's the big nerf this patch, but for the most part, I think these classes are all in a pretty good spot. And before I even get into tier listing these guys, I just want to say that just because a class is in like C or B tier, it does not mean a class is bad. It just means it's not as good as some of the other options by comparison, because just because you're a low tier class does not mean you are a bad class. So number one, we have the Heavy here. Now, Heavy is kind of interesting. This guy is really held back by his balanced parry window. Balanced parry windows kind of suck. No melee option kind of sucks. But that being said, he is incredibly tanky. He has a ton of damage, and his team perks are pretty good. Stuff like Encompassing Aegis, stuff like additional supplies that can definitely enable other classes on your team. So, for example, a Tactical can get that 25% primary weapon damage, primary ammo cache buff to his grenade launcher portion, and that makes your Tactical even more effective, especially this patch. So Heavy is pretty good. I just don't think he's quite there on his own for like A or S tier. He does need a perk tree rework. Even Saber Interactive has come out and said that his perk variety is just not very good at all right now. That is currently planned for year 3, but for now, I would say he's a solid B tier class. He is very good. It's just that he's not quite on the level of some of the other ones we'll get into in a second, starting off with Tech Marine. Now, Tech Marine is the newest class in Space Marine 2. This guy has gone through quite a few buffs, and I'll say, at the moment, he's a pretty strong option in the game, especially for Siege mode. Like, Siege mode, this guy is S tier. Like, Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle is a very powerful option on Siege for both Tech Marine and Tactical, but in the operations and hard strats even, this guy is still pretty good. I think the only place he kind of struggles is in a true solo. He's not a very powerful solo class at times, only because you are so squishy, because the big problem with Tech Marine is that you have the lowest HP total in the game tied to the Sniper class, where you have no HP buffs at all, but you also have a ton of armor. So he tries to like kind of stay with his armor up, and when that armor breaks, he's in a pretty bad spot. But even with that, he's still very strong, and in a team comp especially, he pairs very well top tier classes like the Tactical. So I think this guy goes firmly into the A tier. His perk tree variety is probably like the best in the entire game in terms of build variety, and I would also say in terms of fun, he is easily S tier. Like, Tech Marine is a super fun class. This guy is very strong. I know I previously put him in the S, but I think with the new Chaos Terminator Sorcerer boss, he's a little bit worse than he used to be. But you know, if you play this guy well, he can definitely be up in the S tier if you want to put him there. But for me, I think he's a very high A and a very strong spot, and in Siege mode especially, he's in the S. But for now, overall, I'd say A. Next class we have here is the Tactical class. Tactical has the best class ability in the entire game, in my opinion, with the Auspex scan. Auspex scan is just incredible for any team comp, even without like any perk tree buffs at all. A damage buff for your entire team against heavy hitting enemies like the Neurothrope, Chaos Terminator Sorcerer, or the Hellbrute, just any boss, is just such a good thing to have on your team comp. That's really hard to put this guy anywhere below S. I know like some people might think he's not that strong because he's squishy, but really being a glass cannon is the only downside of Tactical. This guy is a damage output machine. He has the highest damage potential in the entire game. Nothing even comes close to a concentrated fire, precise calibration Auspex scan in terms of like damage enabling for your whole team, and also stuff like the team perk secure stockpile for 60-second recharge on your equipment for your entire team. That grants some of the strongest perk effects in the entire game to classes like Bulwark that are already very strong, but giving a Bulwark a 60-second shock nade, melt a bomb, crack nade, or pyroblaster canister, that is such an incredible tool to have that this guy, it's hard to put him anywhere except the S tier. Tactical really is that class. He's been very strong since the game came out, and even though they are going to give him some more options for perk tree variety in year 3, right now he is just kind of nuts, especially after patch 13, where they did change around some of the damage calculations for stuff like headshot damage that made him even better. And even though they nerfed down that burn damage on the Auspex scan, I mean, Pyroblaster may be worse than it used to be, but his other option, the Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle, is as strong as ever, and this guy is still in an amazing spot, so S tier for sure. Next class here is Bulwark. Bulwark is as godly as ever. This guy is probably the easiest, best class in the game, and what I mean by that is you are absurdly tanky on the Bulwark. This guy's a 30% HP increase in base. He has the highest damage reduction, damage reduction potential in the entire game as well, and also when you have the Invigorating Icon perk, you are able to heal your entire team, and if you don't want that, you can also build for Shield Bash with stuff like Concussive Force to do some of the highest DPS in melee the game has on offer. So Bulwark is incredible, and also on top of all of that, you have an animation cancel for your shield block where you can cancel out of anything you're doing for perfect dodges, which is kind of insane. And the only place this guy's animation cancel is worse than, say, the Assault class is that you can't animation cancel during a parry animation. But that's a very small downside, and his perk tree, despite not having any changes for like a year, he doesn't need them because he's just that guy. And Shield Rush can also stagger like half the enemies in the game, even in rage guys and some of the bosses. So Bulwark, I would struggle to put him anywhere but S. I think he's a little bit below TAC just because Tactical is better in more content right now. Like, Tactical is very strong in hard siege, he's very strong in the operations and the stratagems mode, and it's really hard to take him into any content and see him suffer at all. But honestly, the same is true for Bulwark, so if you want to swap them around, you definitely could, but they are definitely some of the strongest classes in all of Space Marine 2. Next class here is the Assault. Now, Assault, ever since like patch 12, where they gave him an animation cancel on his jump pack dash, where if you use the jump pack dash, you will animation cancel anything you are doing, has been in a very strong spot. They also changed around his perk tree to give him Furious Strikes to give him even more jump packs. And really, with both of his setups like Zealous Blow and Wings of Flame, this guy is kind of a monster. I don't think he's as strong as he used to be because the Chaos Terminator Sorcerer is kind of a harder boss for him in particular, but even then, he has a ton of stagger potential there, so I would say he goes in a very high A. The Assault class does a tremendous amount of melee damage in Space Marine 2, the highest melee damage in the entire game, and really, he is a horde clear monster, a single target monster, and if you take Wings of Flame with commitment into enemies like the Carnifex, I mean, you can just trivialize those bosses all on your own. This guy has come a very long way since the launch of the game, and at the moment, it's hard to put him anywhere lower than A tier, and honestly, if you want to put him in S tier, I can completely understand that. I think both of these guys are very strong, and definitely, you know, nipping at the heels of like Tactical and Bulwark. The next class here that actually needs a buff is the Vanguard. Now, Vanguard is a controversial class in Space Marine 2. A lot of new players will play this guy, or like a lot of players will play him and have an easy time and assume he's like the strongest class in the game. They'll see all the healing perks he has on offer and be like, wow, that's super strong. I'm just clearing content all the time. And that's definitely true. His healing potential is incredible. Like, this guy really does struggle to die. He has a great margin for error, but the big issue with him compared to classes like Bulwark is like Bulwark struggles to die as well. Bulwark struggles to die more than the Vanguard does, and he can also heal his entire team, except this guy also has a way higher damage potential than the Vanguard class does. Vanguard's melee perks are like half broken, and things like Melee Champion have sucked for ages, and even with like buffs to this class over time, he is still just weaker than like every other option because he doesn't really bring a ton to your team except for like support, because things like Inner Fire and Unmatched Zeal, these are good, but the better your team is, the less advantage they are taking of these, and even in things like Siege mode, he's not that strong outside of enabling stuff like Bulwark. So for the most part, I would say this guy firmly goes into like the C tier. I mean, fuck, he might even be in the D tier because he really is significantly lower in power level overall than the other classes are, but he is by no means a bad class. Like, let's be very clear, Zone of Impact Tactical Prowess is very strong, even with all the bugs that surround the grapnel on this class, and they are looking to improve him, especially in year 3. The Vanguard will absolutely be getting buffs in the future, and even though we haven't seen a ton of those yet, they've changed him a bit, but they haven't seen a ton. He's in like a pretty decent spot for the operations and hard strats. You can definitely use him if you want to. He's by no means a bad class. He can clear all content. Let's make that very clear. It's just that when we compare him to things like Heavy, Assault, Tech Marine, Bulwark, and TAC, he is just not close to these guys in terms of damage at all, and his survivability does not really bridge that gap. Next perk here, or not perk, class here is the Sniper. Now, I was sleeping on Sniper for like 2 patches for whatever reason. This guy is the best class in the entire game for hard strats and ops. His his 90-second base cooldown, the Camo Cloak, that they buffed up in a hotfix for patch 12, kind of broke this guy, where as long as you have Purification, Emperor's Grace, and Lingering Concealment, all you have to do is just shoot your Bolt Carbine or Heroic Instigator, and you will just break your Camo Cloak, be invulnerable for 2 seconds, and by the time that runs out, you will have your Camo Cloak again with Purification to recover all of your HP. And because of that, this guy pretty much never dies if you manage his cloak properly. And like, that's really the crux of this class in general, is that if you manage your cloak properly on the sniper class, you will just never die. This class really struggles to die in all content. The only reason this guy is not the strongest class in a mode like Siege mode is because Siege mode is more of a DPS race, and he's not like the best for pushing into, you know, DPS. Tactical and Bulwark are much better for that, and Tech Marine especially. It's just that Sniper doesn't die. So in a mode like Hard Strats and Operations, he just automatically ascends to the top, because all you have to do is just put out your DPS and just wait, and eventually everything on the map will die. This is like the single easiest class in the entire game to go through a Supremacy of the Strong, Twice the Foe, you know, modifier, stratagem modifier with stuff like Tsunami and Extreme Challenge. He really just does not have an issue with any content in Space Marine 2, and even in the Siege mode he's pretty good. It's just that he doesn't have the DPS as some of the other options. But that being said, I think overall for the Hard Strats and Ops, he is just the de facto best class. And even though things like Tactical are very powerful as well, if you have a Sniper on your class, you will just win every match if they know what they're doing, pretty much. And that's why I'd put him up here. But if you want to like put him below Tac or Bulwark, just because these guys are better in Siege mode than he is, I can definitely understand that. But I would still say he's in the tip top of the Hard Strats and Ops. But that is pretty much every class in Space Marine 2. You know, I think patch 14 is a pretty good patch. There wasn't a ton here in terms of content, besides the new heroic options I'll get into in a tier list later, and also the new Chaos Terminator Sorcerer boss. But this is a pretty great small patch, and keep in mind, guys, we are getting an anniversary patch in like a month. That is coming out in September, so there is a very short wait time between this one and the next major patch. Will be much larger than this one with the Chaos Siege mode and all of that. So if you're feeling like you're a little underwhelmed by this option, this patch just a holdover for that one, and we're not even getting to PTS for that one. So get ready for the year 3 roadmap and all of that. And I also want to be clear, this is just my opinion on the best classes in the game, and if you like a certain class, you can definitely play that. You don't just have to play the strongest thing in the operations every single time. This game is all about build variety, so choose whatever you feel best with. And if you have different opinions what the best class is, feel free to let me know in the comments below and give me a reason why, because, you know, I think, you know, having a community consensus on the best class is usually a pretty controversial thing, so I'm sure you guys have your own opinions. But that's all I have to say in this one, guys. You guys, first regards from here, and I'll be talking about every single melee weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 14 and tier listing them. And now this patch has given us some new heroic options. I'll be going through all the relic tier and heroic variants today, because a lot of you guys have asked me to do that. So starting off, we're going to be talking about the Power Axe. Now the Power Axe has been a very strong weapon in Space Marine 2 really since patch 11. That's when they buffed up the block variant. We also have a brand new Encarmine Axe from like back in patch 13, and I would say the Power Axe is a top tier S pick at the moment, mainly because this weapon is best in slot for a Concussive Force Shield Bash Bulwark, one of the most damaging builds in the entire game. It's also best in slot, or like adjacent to best in slot, with the Vanguard's melee setups, and really just like one of his best weapons in general. And the Power Axe is a very powerful pick on pretty much every class it is on. The Power Backstep does a ton for you against Tyranids and Chaos especially, and the block variant, ever since that patch 11 buff, has been in a very good spot. So definitely up in the S tier in my opinion. Next weapon here is the Encarmine Axe. Now the Encarmine Axe is, in my opinion, like a side grade to the normal block axe. This one does a ton of work. The heroic perk effect allows you to store up your power backstep, which doesn't sound like much initially, but the more you play with the Power Axe and this weapon, the more you realize that storing up a power backstep is actually pretty good, because this one brings you a ton of extra cleaving potential. You have double the speed of a standard block variant, and will also have a pretty decent damage output. So I would say this one's pretty pretty equivalent to the normal Power Axe. It's just like a little worse in some areas, but it's kind of the whole point because it's supposed to be a side grade. Next weapon here is the Thunder Hammer. Now, the Thunder Hammer has gone through a ton of buffs in Space Marine 2's life cycle. When the game first came out, this weapon was absolutely dog shit, but as they buffed up things like block weapons, balanced damage overall, this thing has gotten progressively better, and back in patch 10, they upped the AoE of the Ground Slam and the Aftershock. That made this weapon way better, and a huge effect of this weapon on classes like Assault is that unlike every other melee weapon for the Assault class, this one actually has 100 cleave on his ground pound, which means you can hit up to 100 enemies at once and still deal damage to them on the ground pound. Every other option has a 15 cleave base, so this one is incredibly powerful, and I would say it goes up into the S tier, honestly, for Assault class. Maybe not for Bulwark. Like in Bulwark, I'd probably put it in like the A or B tier because he just does not have the same synergy, but for Assault, S for sure. I think this weapon is very strong. Now, for the Storm's Dominion, this weapon is not strong at all. I put this one like C, or probably just C tier, maybe even D tier, to be honest. I think this is like the most overrated heroic in the entire game, besides maybe the ultimate ratio I'll get into later, but this one gives you a shock area effect on your aftershocks. That is not a very strong effect at all. You are way better off with the balance and block versions, and those ones just overperform in pretty much all the content they're in, which is why they've been taken to much more difficult content than this one, and this one does not perform at that same tier. But that being said, it's not a god-awful weapon. Like, it is the best fencing hammer in the game technically. It's just that the heroic perk effect does not really bridge the gap between the relic tier variants. Now, the next weapon here is the brand new heroic Lord Executioner's Axe hammer thing. Now, this one is very close to the other Thunder Hammer. In fact, I might actually put this one up in like the A tier. I don't think it's as strong as the Relic Tier Block Hammer, only because the aftershocks, I think, are a bit better than the spinning effect here. But that being said, the whirling strike effect on the Lord Executioner's Axe, this is a strong effect. The radius of that spin is much larger than you might think initially. It does a ton of work for you and will catch enemies behind you all the time. So really strong option for him, and a block Thunder Hammer in general is going to be better than a fencing one, because really what you want on a charge up attack weapon like this is damage, and this one definitely has that. It's just not quite on the level of the block hammer or like the balance hammer synergies with the classes like Assault, though on Bulwark I think this one is better than like a balance hammer relic tier would be. But that being said, I don't think it quite bridges the gap between like the S tier and the A. But that being said, I think Lord Executioner's Axe is still up here. Now, the next weapon here is the Power Sword. The Power Sword is another success story in Space Marine 2. This weapon has gone through multiple buffs, the most recent one being in patch 13 really upped the base speed to be significantly higher. It feels way better now. This weapon is a pretty strong option. I don't quite think it's S tier. I don't think it's on like the level of the Power Axe or Thunder Hammer on like any build setup. That being said, this weapon does a ton of work, and the horde clear here against Minoris is like top tier for sure. This one can do serious damage on the power whirls and the power style attacks against Hormagaunts and Zangors, and whenever I use the Power Sword, I realize that this weapon really does perform well in hordes where other weapons like the Power Axe even can struggle. So just for that reason, I would put it up in the A, and the Power Rake attacks on this also hit very hard, so a really good option overall. And the block Power Sword can do a ton of work on those power rolls with the double block charges for that damage boost and also the stagger, so definitely an A tier. Next weapon here is the heroic variant with the Xenophase Blade. I think the Xenophase Blade is like the best of the balanced options for heroic weapons. This one is very strong. The heroic perk effect will give you a 20% damage buff and wider arcs on your power rakes, which doesn't sound that much of initially, but this one has a vertical cone increase and a horizontal cone increase, which means that the Xenophase Blade is really good at catching out Neurothropes and Zoanthropes. You are able to cut them out of the sky, and things like Enlightened Zangors as well. Whenever I played the Xenophase Blade, I kind of realized like, wow, this weapon really does catch enemies I would not suspect. I don't know if I'd quite rank it above the Salamander Power Sword or the base Power Sword variants. I think it's much more of a side grade, but it's definitely up here in the A. I think this is a very cool weapon. If we're talking about like how it looks, the Xenophase Blade is S tier in just drip for sure. Now, the next weapon is the newest heroic variant, which is the Salamander's Power Sword. This one is focused on light attacks. You have have a heroic perk effect called Nocturne's Retort that will allow you to store up to 6 Empower stacks, gaining 3 per perfect parry. This one also has a active frame window on the parry equivalent to a block weapon, so like it's slightly shorter than a normal fencing one. But that being said, every light attack you do in speed style for an Empower stack will give you a 300% damage bonus, and the big benefit of this weapon is that it allows you to skip over other perk effects like Overcharge and pick different stuff, because unlike every other power sword in the game, this one does not need to use its power rakes as much. Like every other one with the power sword and Xenophase, these things pretty much always rely on the power rake to do serious damage. This one does not. Unlike things like the Tech Marine, you can take Omniscient Axe Deflection or Methodical Destruction. You can take stuff like Armor Reinforcement on the Assault and not really care. And I think just for that reason, it's a super nice option adjacent to these two. So I put it up here. And I do think this one is better than the Xenophase Blade. And like, honestly, I think this one's just the best power sword at the moment overall. So I probably put it up here, but they're all pretty damn close to each other. Next weapon here is the Combat Knife. So the Combat Knife is, in my opinion, the worst of the base melee weapons in the game right now. It's not bad by any means. The big problem with this one is that it's pretty much power crept entirely by its 2 heroic variants. And even though patch 13 did buff up the block knife to be a bit faster and it does feel a bit better there, it's still not worth taking over the heroic options in my opinion. So I probably put this one in like the C tier. It's not a bad weapon, it's just like, you know, you have way better options on those heroic variants like the Argent Edge. Okay, so the Argent Edge. This is probably the best heroic in the entire game. This is one of the best weapons in the game, period, and is by far the best fencing option in all of Space Marine 2 and the best defensive weapon, because every single parry you do on this weapon will stagger the enemy you are trying to defend against, and that means that things like a triple Ravener hit combo will be interrupted instantaneously, things like a triple Terminator sword combo, and those are the combos that will kill you in Space Marine 2. The way you die in this game is by getting stun locked or like frame trapped into bosses usually, and Argent Edge, this thing can save your life in those situations, because a lot of people think a minigun Terminator is the hardest Extremis in the game on the Chaos faction. The reality is the melee Terminators are way scarier because they are the ones that actually frame trap you, and the Argent Edge can completely circumvent that. So up here in the S, the Argent Edge is just that good. Next weapon here is the Power Gladius. This thing is pretty strong, not as strong as the Argent Edge, but you can definitely one-shot bosses on this option. I think it is in a pretty good spot. The only thing really holding back this weapon is that it is a balanced weapon, which does kind of limit its overall parry window, because balanced weapons outside of the Assault class are not very good, because on the Assault, you can use your jump pack dash to animation cancel out of your parry window, which is really nice to circumvent the awkward parry window of this thing, but this one is only on the Vanguard, Sniper, and TAC, and because of that, you do kind of have that limited window the entire time. Now, the heroic perk effect here can give you up to 360% bonus melee damage, which is really strong for an off-spec scan Shadow Stab, which is actually way more practical than you might think. I do one-shot bosses on this all the time in both Chaos and the Tyranid faction on Tactical, but even with that, I don't think it's quite at the level of the Argent Edge, so I'd probably put in like a low A, maybe even like a high B, but I think A is pretty fair. Next weapon here is the base Chainsword. Now, the Chainsword is pretty good. I think it's been power crept a bit by the Power Sword. I don't think it's as strong as this Relic Tier weapon is, and the only one I would ever take for like the base variant of the Chainsword here is the block version, but that one's pretty slow, and there was a way better block version we'll get into in a second, but the Chainsword I think is firmly in B. It's not bad. I think it's definitely better than the Combat Knife is right now, but I think the Power Sword has definitely kind of gotten like a little over leveled compared to this one, and it's definitely not even close to the Power Axe or the Thunder Hammer on like any of the build setups. The next weapon here is the Double Edge Relic, or not even Color's Teeth, the Double Edge Relic here, which is the heavy attack fist fight option. This one is a total gimmick. It gives you a 15% bonus damage to your heavy attacks, allows you to combo skip into things like your double stomp. That being said, this thing is super fun. I actually like this one a lot. I don't think it's that weak either, and the gimmick effect here is way better than most gimmick effects in Space Marine 2, because like some weapons have dog shit gimmicks, like the Deathwatch Power Fist we'll get into later, but this one's is pretty strong, and on an overcharged build in Assault, I think the balanced parry window here isn't that bad at all. If I play Wings of Flame with this and just stomp into a bunch of Tyranids, that is really entertaining to play with, and the whole point of Space Marine 2 is to be entertained, and this one's really not that bad compared to other options anyway, so I'd say B tier. It's pretty equivalent to normal chainsword. I don't think you really go wrong with these weapons. It's just some options are a bit better. Now, the next weapon here is actually god tier though. This is the White Scar's chainsword. This is a 12 strength, 8 speed block chainsword that can stack up to 3 adrenaline surge stacks. And the final stack will last like a double the length almost of a normal adrenaline surge length, which is kind of insane. This weapon is the best chainsword. This is one of the best melee weapons in the game. If I'm playing Vanguard, I'm either taking this or the Power Axe, and if I'm playing the Assault, this is definitely the best chainsword on him. Also the best chainsword on the Bulwark class. Also the best chainsword on the tactical class. So best in slot, S tier easy. I think it's a little bit below the Arch and Edge, but I think it's definitely equivalent to the Power Axe, if not a bit stronger in a lot of areas. So White Scar's chainsword, incredible pick. I think if you're going to choose 2 heroic melee weapons, these are the ones I would get first, alongside things like the Salamander Power Sword, maybe the Xenophase, and also the Lord Executioner's Axe. Now, the next weapon here is the Omniscion Axe. This weapon is a weapon that is only good on the Tech Marine, but thankfully it's only on the Tech Marine because he kind of circumvents all the awkward moments of this weapon, because this one is all about charging into enemy fire. You get a 50% range damage reduction on your charge attacks. You can also use the balance parry window here, or the balance variant I should say, to 1 combo Majoris, which is really strong on the Tech Marine. And Tech Marine is also able to stagger enemies off his free animation gun strikes with the servo gun to make the charge up attacks go off way more often. It is a very strong combo on him, but like, hey, I mean, this weapon was made for him, which makes perfect sense. I think this one is definitely a strong pick. Maybe not like S tier, but A tier for sure. And if you want to put it up in the S, I honestly can't blame you. This weapon is very strong. It's just that its strongest variant is the balanced one, and the block one definitely falls behind, and it's a heroic one that we'll get into in a second. It's not strong at all. So now, with that being said, let's talk about the ultimate ratio. This weapon got buffed this patch, and this weapon is still bad. There's just no reason to really use this. This one's whole heroic perk effect is based on using the charge attack, and that charge attack can actually trigger perk effects like a methodical destruction, but even with that, there's just no reason to take this over the normal like balance on the Scion Axe version. The charge attacks or the lunging attacks of this one can already build up to one-shot Majoris on absolute, and this one's overall damage is way worse, and you are also giving up your enormously powerful AoE charge attacks that this one just cannot replicate. So I'd say this one's down D, probably the worst heroic in the entire game, besides one we'll get into in a second. Now, the next weapon here is the Relic tier Power Fist. The Power Fist is S tier, okay? This weapon's been S tier for ages. I think this one is honestly kind of cracked, and all you have to do with the Power Fist really on the balance and block version is just charge up your charge attacks and punch the guy, and you'll one-shot Majoris. And like with the overcharge perk, this one is incredibly potent in all content of the game. It has been kind of insane for a while, though I will say it is not the most entertaining weapon to use, and it's pretty equivalent on a lot of builds to the Power Axe or like White Scar's chainsword, but the Power Fist is just kind of cracked, and it's been that way for a while. Now, the next one here is the Deathwatch Power Fist. The Deathwatch Power Fist is dog shit. This weapon's Melt-a-Blast heroic effect is just one of the worst heroic effects in the entire game. It does pretty much nothing for you. Like, this weapon's effect is just such a gimmick that there is no reason to ever use this Melt-a-Blast over a normal Power Fist charge attack, and really all you're doing for this weapon is giving up the damage of a normal balanced Power Fist, because this one has 16 strength, a Relic tier balanced Power Fist has 19, and you're getting like a shitty Melt-a-Blast as a little consolation prize. So there is really no reason to take this one ever over the normal Power Fist variant, unless you really want to use like a goofy effect. There are quite a few ways they could fix this, for like if they made the Melt-a-Blast immediately follow up after a thrust jab or after a lunging attack, that would feel a lot better, and also the animation time needs to be a lot faster. But for now, Deathwatch Power Fist, don't waste your time on this weapon, it kind of sucks. Now, the next weapon here, and the final one, is the Death's Grasp Power Fist. This is the other heroic variant we got in patch 11, and this one's actually pretty good. This one gives you free gun strikes every single time you execute an enemy on a Jason Majoris, and also gives you 200% bonus damage on your light attacks, and also gives you a 50% reduction on your heavy attacks, which all sounds pretty good and potentially pretty bad, but having a 200% bonus on light attacks, hey, guess what? That's really all it takes to actually make a weapon like this have strong light attacks, and I'd say this one one is probably the most noob-friendly weapon in the entire game for melee, because all you have to do on Bulwark or Assault is just take the Armor Reinforcement perk and just farm gun strikes over and over and just get executes and go back into it. It fits into the loop perfectly. You don't have to worry about anything like charge attacks. So I'd say this one goes up in like the low A, honestly. It's a very strong weapon. It's just not quite as strong as a normal Power Fist, but it's definitely a good option. And that is pretty much everything I have to say about the melee weapons in Space Marine 2 patch 14. Now, obviously, this is just my opinion. I'm sure a lot of you guys have different opinions on which weapons you like in the game. And let me know about that in the comments section below. And also, just because one weapon is up in S tier does not mean you're required to use it. You can use whatever you want, even that's the Ultimate Ratio or the Deathwatch Power Fist. We're just comparing them to each other in this list, and that's all I have to say in this one. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. Hey guys, first regards in here, and I'll be talking about every single primary weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 14 and tier listing them. Now we have some new heroics here you guys have asked me to put on the list as well, and I will be doing that today. You may also be wondering, why the hell is Retribution's Request on a primary tier list? Well, that's because I messed up and put the wrong image here, so this one goes up in S. But the point is, we're going to go through every single option here today, and I'll be very clear before we go into this that just because something is up in the S tier, it does not mean you cannot use something in the C tier. Space Marine 2 is not a game that fundamentally requires you to use the God tier option every single time for the majority of content in the game. There are parts of content that do require that, but most of the player base is not engaging with the game like that, and they're not supposed to, because Space Marine 2 is supposed to be a power fantasy, and the game is supposed to give you multiple build options, and at the end of the day, this is just my opinion. So number one, we have the Auto Bolt Rifle D tier. This thing, there is no real reason to use this over the other bolter options in the game currently. This weapon used to be hilariously bad. When I say hilariously bad, I mean it was so bad that Saber Interactive themselves came out and said, this weapon might be shit forever, guys, because we just don't know what to do with the perk tree, and at the moment, it doesn't really have a spot compared to the other bolter options, but they have buffed it up since then. It is an okay gun at close range. It is pretty fun to use with crack and penetrator rounds on the tactical class, but the thing about weapons that use the tactical's perk tree is that the tactical is so strong as a class for bolter options that he can make even a dog shit weapon like this feel pretty good. Not a class like Tech Marine does not have the same ammo boost and things like Emperor's Vengeance or even Emperor's Judgment for damage boost. It just feels garbage. So down here in the D tier, I don't think that's a very hot take at all. Next weapon here is the Pyreblaster. Okay, this weapon used to be up in the S tier. However, as of patch 14, they have nerfed the burn in Space Marine 2 to no longer get a damage buff from the Auspex scan. That has permanently put this one below the S tier in my opinion. I think the Pyreblaster is still a very strong gun. I think it still does a ton of work for like how much you actually have to do with it. Burn is still a very strong effect in Space Marine 2, but the thing that properly put this up into like God tier status was that crazy Auspex burn damage, and that is gone. So I'd say it's a very solid pick, definitely a top tier weapon. It's just up in the A now instead of the S, and I think it's a pretty solid spot for it. And if you want to use this, don't feel bad, just realize it is not just the God King of hard strats and operations anymore. Next weapon here is the Plasma Incinerator. Now, where one weapon gets nerfed, patch 13 actually buffed up the Plasma Incinerator, and ever since the Purgation update, this weapon's pretty damn good. They made the common shot damage way higher, and because you have a AoE on that common shot, if you shoot this gun into hordes, you'll get back a ton of contested health. The damage here feels really good. Plasma boost is already very strong on this thing on the tactical, but even on the Tech Marine, this weapon is very powerful. And there's also a bug in patch 14 where crack and penetrator rounds is applying to this weapon again for whatever reason, but that'll probably be patched. But even without that in mind, I think this one is up in like the lower A tier probably. Plasma Incinerator is a great pick on every class it is on. I think it's come a long way since I put it back in like the C tier, because there was a time this weapon fucking sucked. Next weapon here is the Bolt Rifle. Now this is the standard Bolt Rifle, not the grenade launcher portion or the combi melta. We'll get into that in a second, but the Bolt Rifle. How do I feel about this weapon? It is okay. The ×2 headshot multiplier version has been pretty good for a while. It's just that when it comes to precision shot damage, I think you're just better off taking different things in the game, like the Deathwatch Rogue heavy bolt rifle, or even just a heavy bolt rifle in general. This weapon does fit a niche here on the tactical class where you can just build for like pure headshot damage. That is pretty strong, but the thing is, On a class like Tech Marine, I really would never take this because it's just not a good option for him, and I think you're better off with its other variants down here, like the grenade launcher. This weapon is S tier. Grenades are so strong in Space Marine 2. They are top tier in hard strats, operations, siege mode as well. And the thing about grenades is that on the tactical especially, if you aspect scan with concentrated fire and precise calibration, you can just pelt an entire Majoris or Extremis horde and obliterate them in like 2 seconds. It is hilarious how much damage you can actually do. But on top of that, grenades have a huge amount of contested health recovery, and that contested health recovery saves your life because let's say that you're playing Tech Marine or the tactical and you get knocked over by like a Lictor unblockable and you were just losing like 90% of your HP about if you and like you're trying to get back your contested health. This takes like one shot of a grenade to get back all of that. Top tier option for that reason alone. S tier for sure, and the fact it's top tier in Siege since like patch 8, just, I mean, that puts it up in the S. I think that's only a hot take at all. Next weapon here is the Combi Melta. Now this is bugged in patch 14, and it's bugged in a weird way where the ammo caches are no longer giving you back the Melta portion. That sucks. I'm not a fan of that. That being said, I think the Combi Melta is okay. I think this is a pretty good side grade to the standard bolt rifle here. I think it is not a top tier option by any means, but the utility of a Melta portion here, I think that's actually quite strong on both the Tech Marine and the tactical class. Being able to trigger perk effects like Rapid Health or Rampage very easily on that Melta portion is super nice, and people really undervalue how strong a staggering effect like Melta actually is, because there are a lot of enemies in Space Marine 2 that you want to stagger. Things like Tyranid snipers, things like minigun terminators, and having those options against Chaos especially, super great utility. And that's part of the reason grenade launchers are so strong, and this one's really just like a worse grenade launcher, which is why it's down in B, but it's still pretty strong for that stagger opportunity. So over here for sure. Next weapon here is the heavy bolt rifle. Now the heavy bolt rifle is a pretty good gun. I do think this one is above the standard bolt rifle. I'm not sure if I'd properly put it in the A tier, but I definitely think it's better than the bolt rifle is, probably over the top of B. It's really just a DACA gun. Like, there's not a lot to this thing. The headshot scope version is like okay. There's really not a ton of reason to use the heavy bolt rifle in patch 14 on like the standard relic tier variants anymore. But it's not to say that these are bad. That's only because the next weapon we'll get into is God tier, but heavy bolt rifle still pretty good over in the B. Next weapon here is the Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle. This is like a top 5 heroic in all Space Marine 2, probably a top 2 actually, and this is the best in slot weapon currently for both the tactical and the Tech Marine. And really what this weapon is it's a heavy bolt rifle, but you got a grenade launcher. And guess what? All it took to take this thing up to S tier was a grenade launcher. And this is actually the best grenade launcher in the entire game. I would say Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle is the only reason the bolt rifle grenade launcher is not best in slot in the Tech Marine and the tactical, because this one's just a better gun effect on top of a grenade. So a really strong perk effect here, a really strong weapon in general. You cannot go wrong with this at all. And I actually say, if you're looking for a heroic to buy first, this or the Argent Edge are the ones I'd pick every single time. So definitely up here in the S. Next weapon here is the Stalker Bolt Rifle. This thing is pretty good. I think the damage output here is actually quite powerful. If you have a tac or a sniper on your team using the Stalker Bolt Rifle and there's an annoying Zoanthrope or Neurothrope in front of you, if they just shoot that shit with like 4 shots, you will body a Zoanthrope, and really like one magazine is all it takes with an Auspex scan to just delete a Neurothrope. And because of that, I think the Stalker Bolt Rifle is up in the A. This weapon is very strong. It is a very strong option. The only reason it's not like S tier is because it doesn't really have a ton of utility, even though the contested health recovery here is quite high, even though the damage is great and the ammo economy is okay on both the classes it is on. It is also just limited to being purely a DMR, and while DMRs are pretty good, there are many other weapons in the game that do a lot more than that, but definitely a strong pick. Next weapon here is the brand new heroic, the Deathwatch Stalker Bolt Rifle. Now, in a world where one Deathwatch weapon is S tier, one must not be S tier. That's this one. This one will give you the heroic perk effect Reconnaissance by Fire, which with 4 consecutive body shots, you will deploy an Auspex scan area with a cooldown of 8 seconds. Now this Auspex is completely separate from the Auspex scan on the tactical, and they actually stack multiplicatively. So if you take this one on a tactical class and you deploy the Auspex off of this perk effect and you stack your other Auspex on top of it, you are giving your teammates a huge damage bonus. My only problem with this is this weapon has no piercing at all compared to the Stalker Bolt Rifle. This one has a 1 piercing versus the 4 on the A tier 1 here. And I think because of that, you're really lacking a lot of the free damage and like the per shot value that this one will give you. The Auspex scan area is nice. That's really kind of a gimmicky effect. I know a lot of people think this one's like a great support weapon, but there are just way better options on the classes that this weapon is on, like the Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle, like the other option here with the Bolt Carbine we'll get into later. And it's not a terrible weapon by any means. I would probably put it up in the B. The only thing that kind of sucks on this is like a weird perk activation where at the moment the consecutive 4 body shots you require to trigger the perk effect, those will only take effect if you actually hit them consecutively with no other types of damage in between. And what I mean by that is if you put out like a shock grenade right now and a single damage tick of that shock grenade happens while you're trying to get your 4 consecutive body shots, it will disrupt your streak, and that sucks. So for now, I think this one's over in the B, but definitely not like a god-awful weapon by any means, but I think the normal Stalker Bolt Rifles are a bit better. Next weapon here is the Heavy Plasma Incinerator. This weapon is just a big damage guy. I mean, the Heavy Plasma has been a great weapon since like the game came out pretty much. They buffed it up like way back when, and they haven't really touched it since. The only major downside of this weapon is that your ammo economy fucking sucks on this thing. Like the ammo economy is just not strong at all. You will run out of ammo all the time if you do not build around that as like an eventuality. But that being said, the damage here is great. The common shot value is great. I think this one deserves to be up in the S tier as a gun. It's still really strong. It's just that ammo economy, but you know, you could probably put in the high A as well, just because the next option we'll get into in a second is a bit better. But you know, I'll put it up in the S. I think Heavy Plasma is still very, very strong, but if you want to put it down the A, I definitely can't argue with you there. Like, that's a pretty reasonable take. Next thing here is the Relic Battle-Worn Heroic Heavy Plasma. This one just gives you a fully automatic plasma with no charge shots, just like the normal Heavy Plasma. This thing's ammo economy sucks. Actually, this thing's ammo economy is even worse, but that being said, it's a really strong gun. I think it's like the second best gun on the heavy class in general right now. There's one other I'll get into later that I think is the best one, but for now, I think they're like the 2 best in slot options for him. So that kind of like fundamentally puts this one up in the S tier for me. I would put it over the normal Heavy Plasma because common shots on the Heavy Plasma, they actually have a lot of AoE already. They also have amazing contested health recovery. Super underrated weapon effect, to be honest, but this one's very strong. Definitely up here in my opinion. Next weapon here is the Oculus Bolt Carbine. This one is... it's okay. It is okay. I'm gonna actually put this below the B tier here. I mean, there are like headshot multiplier versions on this. I know a lot of Vanguard players like this weapon as well, but at the moment, there are just way better picks on Vanguard and the Tech Marine as well than this one. It's just not that strong. It has like one good variant, and the headshot damage here is nice, but the ammo economy is not that good either on that variant. And I would just say for the most part, it is lagging a little bit behind these other options. But, you know, if you want to put it up in like the lower B, I can't really argue with you there, but C is where I would put this one. Next weapon here is the Melter Rifle. Okay, so Melter Rifle. I kind of go back and forth on this one. I think this weapon is pretty good. I mentioned before with the Combi Melta that staggering effects are very strong, and this weapon is like all stagger effects. And the contested health recovery here is pretty good. The stagger effect is pretty great. The ammo economy is very strong thanks to rapid health perk effects. It also has armor regen built into it. It also has healing built into it. So overall, this weapon is pretty strong. I actually think the Melter Rifle is better on the tactical than the Vanguard, but I think you could definitely put this up into like top of B or A. I'm pretty sure I put it in A last time. I don't know if I feel that way about it currently compared to the other A tier options, but you know, usually when I take a Melter Rifle, it does perform very well and like usually shocks me. So I'll probably put it like a lower A. The next one here is a weapon people kind of hate, which is the Salamander Melter Rifle. I don't understand the hate for this thing. Like, the charge up on this is a little long, but the damage here is better than normal Melter Rifle. It has utility the other Melter Rifle does not have, especially against Chaos, where you can just like penetrate like 5 Rubric Marines at once from like a mile away. This weapon's actually pretty decent. I think it is a side grade to the Melter Rifle standard, or like maybe ever so slightly worse than it, but I don't think this one is underperforming compared to the normal Melta that much at all. And the Salamander Melter Rifle, I'd probably put up in like the high B. Like, if you really don't want to put an an A, I can kind of understand, but for now, with like one more buff to the charge time on this, I think it'll be up in the A tier with the melter rifle. But honestly, you kind of put it there already. But in my opinion, I think this one is pretty decent. Not a top tier pick, but definitely okay. Next weapon here is the Instigator Carbine. This weapon, I'm just gonna put this in the D, dude. You never use this weapon anymore. Like, this weapon is just a pointless weapon to take. I mean, that's kind of true for the heavy bolt rifle. I did put it up in the B, but this one especially, the Instigator Carbine, the other variant, the heroic version, is just like better in damn near every single way. And I just think the Instigator Carbine is kind of a forgotten weapon because of that. I mean, I'm sure players still use this, but if you have the Wrapped Instigator, just use this one, because this one has way better damage, way better ammo economy in a lot of cases, and also it just fits the playstyle of the classes it is on far more, because say you're playing a sniper, you're going to be using the perk effect targeted shot that gives you a 75% range and damage buff on your next shot, and because Patch 11 actually buffed up that perk to have a lingering effect, you get that bonus damage on all 5 shots of the Wrapped Instigator. However, if you take a normal Instigator Carbine, you're only getting that bonus on 3 shots, so you're actually getting less value as some of your best perks. And on the Vanguard, you want to be 2 feet in front of an enemy anyways, so Wrapped Instigator is way better for that as well, since the only real upside of a normal Instigator is the accuracy at like medium to long range, but this one's pretty good at medium range and great at close, and that fits the playstyle of the weapon in general far better, because if you're playing long range, you're probably not picking this in the first place. So I'd say this one can go up into like the A tier. It is a very strong pick at the moment. Like, the Wrapped Instigator is substantially better than the other Instigator Carbine, and I think it is definitely on the level of things like the Stalker Bolt Rifle, and damn near best in slot for some things. Next weapon here is the Pyre Cannon. The Pyre Cannon got buffed this patch. It has a 15% range increase to the hip fire and the heavy stance. Now, the Pyre Cannon has always been lagging behind the Pyre Blaster, but in this patch, I think they're actually pretty equivalent. I think the Pyro Blaster is a bit better only because it's on the Tactical, and Tactical just makes everything better, because Tactical is just a better class than the Heavy is, but Pyre Cannon feels way better now. The big benefit of this gun over the Pyro Blaster is that this one does a lot more direct damage. The direct damage of the Pyre Cannon is very strong, and you will also apply burn stacks that hip fire far faster than the Pyro Blaster, and the ammo economy here is not too bad either. So if you take perk effects like Flash Burn, this one can actually put out a lot more damage on that direct hit than the Pyro Blaster can, and I think this one is still up in the A, maybe B. Maybe B. I don't know. I don't know if I put it above these things, because I don't know if I'd ever take this as like a top tier option. I'll put it in B. Okay, you know, we'll put it in B. I still think it's pretty close to the Pyro Blaster, but I do think the Pyro Blaster is like a tier above just because it's on tack. But like as a weapon, Pyro Cannon's still in the B. I think it's a pretty good spot for it. It's definitely not bad these patches anymore. I think it's actually pretty good. Next weapon here is the Bolt Carbine. Now, I've been putting Bolt Carbine in A for a while, but I have been Bolt Carbine pilled in the past like 2 patches, and this one's S tier. Okay, Bolt Carbine has so much damage at close range, so much contested health recovery, and ammo economy that is like actually kind of insane, that this is just a god tier pick for like both Chaos and Tyranids. You really cannot go wrong with the Bolt Carbine. It is such a strong gun. There's also a hidden effect here where within 10 meters of an enemy, you get a bonus to your headshot damage multiplier, which means if you're playing a sniper or a Vanguard and you just barrel stuff people, you're doing even more damage. That's all this weapon wants to do, and it also has such a strong ammo economy that classes like Vanguard that usually struggle, they will never run out on this option. So Bolt Carbine up in the S tier in my opinion, one of the best guns in the entire game, and part of the best build in the entire game for hard strats and ops in my opinion on the sniper class. Next weapon here is the Marksman Carbine. The Marksman Carbine's also very strong. Now, back in patch 12, I don't know what Saber was thinking, but they gave the Marksman Carbine's ammo reserve option and magazine capacity version better headshot damage than the ×2 headshot multiplier version, which means you just have like a 40 round magazine on this thing with like infinite ammo that does more damage than the headshot version. So I mean, this one, I don't think it's as good as the normal Bolt Carbine, but it's definitely up in the A tier. This is actually kind of a goofy gun. I like the Marksman Carbine a lot. It also has like a really fun like little sound effect. The biggest problem I have with this one is it gives you carpal tunnel, but I mean, Marksman Carbine, it may not be as good as the automatic one in my opinion, but it's still very strong. It's just kind of hilarious they gave it like more headshot damage on ammo option, but hopefully they never nerf that. The next weapon here is the Combi Flamer Bolt Carbine. This is the brand new Bolt Carbine in Space Marine 2 patch 14 for the heroic variant, and this is just a Bolt Carbine automatic variant with like 20% less damage and a Pyre Blaster attached to it basically. And the real question here is a combi flamer, is a bolt carbine with less damage worth the trade-off for a Pyroblast attachment? And the answer for this one is no, in my opinion. I think this one needs a damage buff. I think like if you just gave it like maybe only a 10% decrease from the bolt carbine, because the damage here is a little lacking on both portions. It's not a bad gun by any means, but it's not a bad gun because the bolt carbine in general is such a strong gun that even with a 20% damage reduction or so, that's not the exact number, but like with a reduced damage, it is still so strong as a gun that it performs very well. It's just, I think you're better off taking the Relic Tier variants. This one going B. I think it's about equivalent to the Death Watch right now because it's not super strong, it's just not terrible. Next weapon here is the Multi-Melta. Multi-Melta with the ammo reserve option has very good ammo economy. With the rapid fire version, it has incredible damage output. I don't think I'd say this one's S tier anymore. I think it's fallen off a little bit. Maybe the heroic version will be better, but right now I think the heavy plasma and the heavy bolter are both better, and the multi-melta is still very strong. I just don't think it's up in the tier it used to be because the balance parry window here kind of holds it back a bit, and the ammo economy is not super strong on its more damaging variants, but it's still pretty decent. Next weapon here is the Heavy Bolter. This is the standard Heavy Bolter. This one got a body shot damage buff to its shots, just like all the other Bolter weapons in Space Marine 2 patch 13. That is pretty good, and the Heavy Bolter is a pretty strong gun. The only reason I put over here in like the A tier with the Multi-Melta is because of the next variant, which is the Chains of Duty. This is the heroic Heavy Bolter. This is the best weapon on the heavy class, in my opinion. This gives you a fencing parry window, and giving a fencing parry window to the heavy class solves like 99% of his issue, because the problem with balanced parry windows is there are things in Space Marine 2 that you just cannot respond to with a balanced parry window, and if you have a fencing option, it will just give you way more opportunities to actually get off your gun strikes, survive things that would otherwise frame trap you. And the heavy is like the god king of getting frame trapped, so having this option here, I think like de facto puts it as the best. And also, this weapon has no charge up for its max fire rate on the heavy bolter, unlike the relic tier, and because of that, your contested health recovery here is also top tier, and it fits very well into other build options of the heroic plasma pistol, because you get all the contested health recovery from this on that instant fire and a ton of stagger and damage for burst on the other variant. So I think this one's up in the S. I say it's a little bit above the heroic plasma, but definitely a strong gun. Next weapon here is the normal relic tier bolt sniper. Now, the bolt sniper I think is like C tier. I don't think there really is any reason to take the normal variants unless you are not hitting your headshots anymore. Like maybe if you're playing against Chaos, because the heroic bolt sniper is definitely better than this one. I have used this before, but it always feels a bit underpowered after you play with the wrapped bolt sniper rifle, because you're shooting multiple shots in Tyrian warriors all the time. Your ammo economy is pretty good, but I think there are multiple way better options for the sniper than this one if you're not going for like pure damage on a headshot. And I think the stalker bolt rifle is just like way more forgiving anyways and has more damage output in the first place. So I think this one goes down to C. I don't think it's a very good gun. I mean, it's an okay gun. It's just kind of like power crept by the next option, which is the wrapped bolt sniper rifle. This weapon is the best bolt sniper rifle in the game. I think this is a super fun option to use. It does kind of suck against Chaos because Chaos hitboxes are just super weird, and like you have to be super careful with how you actually hit them because you will waste ammo all the time. And for whatever reason, Saber said you can't get ammo back from this one on Versatile Precision because they just don't want this thing to have a strong ammo economy outside the headshots, because every headshot on this weapon will replenish your shot in your magazine, which is pretty good for like technical infinite ammo. But Versatile Precision I think would be nice on this, and I really don't think this weapon is stronger than a bolt carbine anyways, so I'd say it's up in the A. I think these two are pretty equivalent. I know I put an S before, but I've kind of been bolt carbine build since then. Final weapon here is the Last Fusel. Now, the Last Fusel is a funny gun because the Last Fusel is definitely a very strong weapon, but it's actually the worst weapon on Sniper right now. And you're probably thinking like, what do you mean the Last Fusel is the worst weapon on Sniper right now? Well, the thing about Sniper at the moment is in patch 12, they buffed up his camo cloak from a 120-second cooldown to a 90-second cooldown, which means the moment you shoot a bolter weapon like the Wrapped Instigator, like the bolt carbine, like the Wrapped bolt sniper rifle, you'll be canceling your camo cloak and immediately putting it into cooldown. But because that 90-second cooldown exists now, you will get your camo cloak back almost instantly off of like just waiting from like your first shot, which is super strong for the bolt weapons. However, the last Fusel charge up will not break your camo cloak, so you're wasting cooldown this one compared to the other variants, which is pretty funny, but this weapon's still very strong. I'd say it's up in the A tier, maybe a little bit below the bolt sniper, but it's definitely easier to use against chaos. I'd say they're pretty equivalent for like different reasons, but the last Fusel, definitely a great gun, just currently the worst on sniper for like reasons beyond itself. Now, that is pretty much everything there is for the tier list in patch 14. Like I said before, this is just my opinion. You guys can let me know where you would put these primary weapons in the tier list. I think the tier list here is pretty accurate to my opinion. There might be a couple things I'd move around, but for the most part, I think the best weapons really are just like the Death Watch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle, Grenade Launcher variants, Chains of Duty, Relic Battle Worn Heavy Plasma, and the Bolt Carbine. I think these are all very powerful weapons, and the other options here on the A tier are all incredibly high performing. But that is all I have to say in this one, guys. Hey guys, personal regards from here, and I'll be talking about every single secondary weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 14 and ranking them on a tier list. Now, all the secondary weapons in this game are in a pretty decent spot at the moment. There are a couple I do think should be buffed a little bit, but also this patch we got some changes to both the Bolt Carbine and the Honorific Relic Tier Heroic Bolt Pistol. I'll be talking about that today. Before we even get into this, I do want to say that this is just my opinion. All of these options are pretty good, like I mentioned before. If you want to use something that's not like S tier, don't feel required to use it just because I put it up here. My opinion is not the only opinion in this game. Now, first up, we have the Bolt Pistol. The Bolt Pistol is a pretty decent option. They buffed this one up back in like patch 11 or patch 12. The firepower variant I think is the best version overall here. The damage is pretty good. The ammo economy is quite strong, but I have to say, after the recent buff of the Heroic Bolt Pistol option, I think this one's actually way better than the other Bolt Pistol variants because this one's gun strike damage is very high, and for the most part, I think this one's been a little power crept by that. I'll probably put it in the B. It's not a bad option by any means. I do use this quite a bit, though I think it's mainly best just for like overall ammo economy these days. Next weapon here is the Honorific Relic Tier Heroic Bolt Pistol. This one got a 15% base damage buff in patch 14, and that makes the gun strike damage here equivalent to a firepower heavy bolt pistol, which puts it as like a top 3 option in the entire game. Really strong weapon now, and also I was already a big fan of this on classes like the Sniper because the 3-round burst mechanic here, that will trigger perk effects like Pattern of Excellence. I think this one is very strong at the moment, potentially my favorite of all the bolter options, and I might even put it up in the S tier. Is that a crazy take to say? I think this one's a very strong bolter option on every class in the game, and because of that base damage buff, and because contested health recovery is based on the damage dealt, this one is very strong now for contested health recovery compared to other bolter options, and it's also a very accurate weapon, very ammo efficient, and the Elite Hunter perk buffs up that damage very high. So I think this one's up in the S for now. I mean, it's a hot take, maybe you don't agree, but I think this one's actually pretty strong this patch. Next weapon here is the Heavy Bolt Pistol. The Heavy Bolt Pistol is a great option. Gun strike damage here is strong, per shot damage is pretty strong as well. The ammo reserve option here is pretty ammo efficient compared to most of the other options in the game, especially like the Bolt Carbine, and I think this one's pretty good. I might actually put it below the Honorific Relic Tier right now. I think the Heroic variant's a bit better. If I'm not taking the Heroic version, I'm planning to take an Honorific Relic Tier or a Standard Bolt Pistol maybe, but I think this one actually kind of deserves to be in the A just because that gun strike damage is so high, and this one's been a pretty top tier pick since, like, you know, the game came out really. Next weapon here is Retribution's Bequest, the Heroic Heavy Bolt Pistol. This one has the perk effect No Help is Coming, where any body shot will interrupt a reinforcement call, and any headshot on a reinforcement calling enemy will just one-shot the guy. So this one is actually really strong in my opinion. This is the highest gun strike damage in the game, so for gun strike builds, this one is super strong. The main place this one struggles with is the horrible bloom on the accuracy, and also the fact its ammo economy is not that strong. But that being said, being able to one-shot reinforcement calling enemies in Space Marine 2, that is a really strong perk effect. You definitely don't notice as much until you start using this more, where enemies call reinforcements all the time in operations and hard strats, and on the hard strats and modifiers like coordinated calls and stuff like summoner for reinforcements calling extremis, this one is super valuable. I think it's actually a very strong option in the game anyways, so S tier in my opinion. I think these two are pretty equivalent, and I probably swap them out depending on like the mission. Next weapon here is the Plasma Pistol S tier. This weapon is incredible. The rate of fire, firepower variant, it does not matter. The body shot damage of all of the plasma weapons got buffed up in patch 13, which means the contested health recovery of the Plasma Pistol now is actually pretty good, even without the charge shots. And the charge shots have incredible stagger, which is super helpful against things like minigun Terminators. I think the Plasma Pistol is just a top tier pick in Space Marine 2, period. And also the heroic variant we'll get into in a second. But contested health recovery for your common shots as well, damage output, and also overall ammo efficiency is pretty good these days. I mean, it's definitely not as ammo efficient as, say, an honorific Reliquary Bolt pistol, but if you were playing the Bulwark class with auxiliary reload, this one's actually pretty damn strong against all enemies in the game, and against some more annoying options like the Enlightened Zangors, being able to charge shot them, just AoE them, super valuable for us. So I think Plasma Pistol definitely deserves to be up here. The next weapon here is the Heroic Plasma Pistol. This might be the strongest overall in the entire game right now for a secondary. The Heroic Plasma is just so damn damaging that it's kind of nuts for a secondary option. This one basically hits like a heavy plasma on steroids, but it's also attached to classes that usually don't have a damage nuking effect like that. So for example, if you're playing the Tech Marine or the Tactical, you can just slap on a Heroic Plasma and you will do a ton of extra damage for like really giving up nothing, because your primary will just make up for all the downsides, because the Heroic Plasma has a 5 business day charge up speed. But if you're playing a Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle on your Tactical and Tech Marine, you don't really care, because those are kind of making up for that instant contested health recovery, and this one's just there to one-shot Extremis or two-shot them or one-shot Majoris. It's also very strong versus bosses. And on the Tactical class right now, it's also bugged like the other plasma weapons with crack and penetrator rounds, but even without that, I think this one is still a top-tier option. I might even put it above the normal plasma, but the only place I think this one struggles is on classes like Assault and Bulwark, where you really do want to have a better option for a secondary for like immediate contested health recovery, because this one just takes too long to charge up as like a purely secondary in my opinion. But on classes like Tactical that already have a primary, it is a top tier pick every time. Next weapon here is the Neovolkite. The Neovolkite is a pretty good gun in Space Marine 2. Back in patch 13, they buffed up the heating speed, which was a huge buff to this weapon. They also said they buffed up the contested health recovery, and that is technically true. They did buff up the contested health recovery on the actual like heat explosion of this weapon, but that's not really where you want the CHP regen to be, so that buff is not super strong, because the contested health recovery, like the heat explosion, that was already pretty decent before. But the big buff you really wanted was like a contested health recovery for the actual laser beam, and they didn't do that. So I'd say this one's up in the A. If you're playing a class like the Vanguard that can just take this weapon as a secondary, or the Tech Marine and still have his primary option, it is a great option in the game. I think this one will wipe out Spore Mines, will wipe out Bramble very easily, Cultists as well. It's a great utility option and does a ton of damage to enemies that you just really wouldn't expect, but as like a pure secondary on the Assault or like maybe the Bulwark, I don't think it's very strong. But that being said, I still think it's up in the A tier. Next weapon here is the Inferno Pistol. This one is probably the most underrated secondary in the game, in my opinion. The stagger here is super strong. The ammo economy is very strong. There's also a ton of utility on this weapon, where your gun strikes will do full damage to everybody you hit with this, and this thing has a fat radius, which is pretty insane. And they also buffed up the gun strike damage a while back to be significantly better. And also the melee damage buff here is fun for like a gimmick effect on a lot of melee builds in the game. I think this one is pretty damn good, very strong against Chaos. This might actually be better against Chaos than it is Tyranids, because the Inferno Pistol does kind of suck against Zoanthropes, but so does the Plasma. But this one I think is just a little bit under this S tier, but still a very strong pick, and I probably put it a little bit above the Neovolkite. Inferno Pistol is definitely pretty good. Next weapon here is the Bolt Carbine. This is the worst secondary in the game. They have buffed this weapon twice, and my big issue with this gun is that the perk tree here is just not very strong at all. There's really only one good path for this weapon, and as far as variants go, the accuracy version like completely goes against the base idea of this weapon. This weapon gets more damage at close range than like 10 meters of an enemy, and the other perks on this weapon for that accuracy variant give you more damage at range, which is just wasting more ammo. And this thing is pretty ammo efficient these days, because patch 14 did buff up the magazine capacity by 1, but I really don't ever see myself taking this over like an honorific relic tier, heroic plasma, plasma pistol, retribution's bequest, inferno pistol even. I think this one is down the C tier. It needs to be buffed up on that base damage a little bit, I feel, because at the moment this thing is just a little boring of a perk effect in its perk tree, and also just a little boring as a weapon. And the only thing it's really good for is like just getting back contested health because it is a fully automatic weapon, but other options are also pretty good for that, and they do a lot more on top of that. But that's pretty much all I have to say in this one, guys. This is a pretty good setup for how I feel about the weapons in the game currently, but you guys let me know what you think in the comments section below. I know a lot of you guys love the heroic plasma, maybe some of you love the bolt carbine, but I've seen a lot of people complaining about this one, and I can't really blame them because the bolt carbine definitely could use one more buff or like a perk tree rework. But that's all I have to say in this one, guys. Hey guys, first regards in here, and I'll be talking about every single heroic weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 14 and tier listing them. And now I am getting over a chest cold, so my voice may be cracking like a Sierra fault line throughout this video, but bear with me here because we'll be going over every single option the game has on offer for a heroic weapon now, and there are a ton in the game in 2026. We're about to get 6 more almost guaranteed in patch 15 in September, so we're gonna have a ton of options for Space Marine 2, and we're going through them all one by one with like no particular order, starting off with the Xenophase Blade. Now the Xenophase Blade, this is S tier for aura. Like, the Xenophase Blade looks really cool, but the heroic power effect on this buffs up the radius of your power rake, and the radius here, or the arc increase, will give you a vertical increase and a horizontal increase, which is super strong for killing enemies like Zoanthropes and Neurothropes, and also buffing up your damage against stuff like Enlightened Zangors. Super nice weapon. I think this one's actually pretty strong despite its balanced parry window, and on classes like Tech Marine you can one-shot Majoras with this pretty much, so I would say A tier. I think the Xenophase Blade is in a pretty good spot. This weapon has been buffed multiple times since it originally came out in patch 10 last year, and at the moment it's in a great spot, and I think it's a contender for like a top 3 power sword in the entire game. Now the next weapon here is the Combi Melta. The Combi Melta is a bolt rifle with a Melta portion attached to it. I kind of like this thing, okay? Now, it's not the strongest option in the game. The Combi Melta is definitely lagging behind a lot of the other stronger options we have, like the heroic Deathwatch rifle we'll get into later. But that being said, it has its use case scenarios. It has a pretty easy time triggering perk effects like Rapid Health or, you know, Rampage, and because of that, I think it's a pretty solid pick for B tier. I don't think it's like really that strong. I would definitely not put in A, but as far as like a utility option goes, I like this on Tech Marine. I like this on the tactical class. It performs pretty well. It's just not like, you know, mind-blowing or anything. Next weapon here is the Power Gladius. This weapon is actually pretty damn strong. You can one-shot bosses with a charged up Shadow Stab, because what this weapon does is it gives you a 120% melee damage increase to your next attack that can stack up to 3 times on a perfect dodge, which with a tactical aspects is kind of absurd amounts of damage. I think this one is super underrated. The only thing that's really holding this back is the balanced parry window, and I think the other heroic knife is definitely better, but Power Gladius still pretty strong. I think it is actually above the Xenophase potentially, because this weapon can be super clutch on both Chaos and Tyranids, where I've had moments where I'm playing tactical and I'm like, okay, if I don't one-shot this boss, I might be fucked, and this weapon has saved me in those scenarios. And just because of that, I think the ability to one-shot a boss on a pretty standard repeat is a really strong option in the game. Power Gladius is definitely up in A for me. Next weapon here is the Heroic Plasma Pistol, S tier. Heroic Plasma Pistol is one of the best new heroics we've had in the entire game. This weapon is best in slot on multiple builds for Tech Marine and the tactical class, and also the heavy class. It's not super strong in the melee classes like Bulwark and Assault, mainly because they want that contested health recovery, but this weapon basically turns your plasma pistol into a one-shot heavy plasma incinerator. But because it's on the classes it's on, like tactical and Tech Marine, you can get that damage up to like ludicrous numbers, and as a secondary option, being able to just AoE blast down an Extremis in one shot, that is incredible. And the big problem with the heavy plasma and stuff like that has always been ammo economy, but when you slap this on a class like Tactical that already has a great primary and great melee weapon, all those downsides of a heavy plasma gun go away, and the upsides of damage are all that's left. So S tier for sure. Heroic Plasma Pistol is one of the best weapons in the game. Next weapon here is the honorific Relic Tier Bolt Pistol. Now, this weapon actually got a buff in patch 14. They have upped the base damage by 15%. This has made this one of the best secondaries in the game for gunstrike damage. It's now equivalent in gunstrike damage with the heavy bolt pistol firepower variant, and the 3-round burst mechanic here is actually quite strong for other perk effects like Pattern of Excellence. I think the honorific relic tier is actually a pretty strong gun in the game right now. I don't know if I'd put it in A tier. I think it is best in slot for stuff like the sniper builds, but overall I think there are some better options. Like Hero Plasma Pistol is definitely better for like an overall damage nuking effect, but I would say this one can definitely go up in the it's actually pretty hard. I'll put it in A. I think A is actually a pretty good spot for this because honorific relic tier is pretty strong this patch. Maybe not like top of A, but definitely deserving. Next weapon here is the Relic Battle-Worn Heavy Plasma Incinerator. This takes away your charge shots on your heavy plasma entirely, completely swapping them out for light shots that are actually shockingly damaging with great AoE on their own. The common shots of a heavy plasma are super underrated in Space Marine 2. The only problem I have with this gun is really a problem I have with all heavy plasma guns, which is that the ammo economy on this is dog shit. If you don't build for pure ammo, you will run out. Like the Relic Battle-Worn will eat through your ammo like nothing else in Space Marine 2 I have used. It is kind of absurd, but that being said, when you have ammo, when you build this for stuff like Strategic Stand or just go for full ammo economy, it does a ton of damage and you can just shoot forever. And also there's a way to make this never overheat. So I would say this one also goes up in the A tier. I think it's a great option and arguably the best heavy plasma in the game, and that alone puts it up here for me. Next weapon here is the Kohler's Teeth, or the Double Edge Relic for the this isn't even Kohler's Teeth, it's called the Double Edge Relic in game. Either way, this is the heavy attack chainsword balance variant. This one is okay. I definitely undervalued this last patch. I did try it out a bit more on like an overcharge build on the assault, and I have to say, it's pretty fun. Like, this weapon is pretty fun to use. The double stomp builds are pretty gimmicky, but also pretty entertaining, and the damage this can put out is actually pretty substantial. And ever since patch 12, when they gave an animation cancel to the assault class on his jump pack dash, you were able to cancel out of balanced parry windows, and because of that, this weapon is actually better than ever on him. Same thing with the Xenophase Blade, and I think you could probably put this up in the B. You know, it's not as strong as the other one we'll get into later, but it's definitely a good option, and you really can't go wrong with using it. Just be a little careful with that balanced parry window, but the damage buff definitely pretty decent. Next weapon here is the brand new Salamander Power Sword. This one is really fucking strong right now. It gives you a 300% damage bonus on empower stacks when you perfect parry an enemy, and this is for your speed style as a light attack weapon. I think the Salamander Power Sword is very strong. I think it's a top 3 contender for the best power swords with like the Block Power Sword, Xenophase, and Salamander here, and I think this one's actually over the Xenophase Blade. I know it might be like a hot take, but I think the fact that this is a fencing parry window, even if like the actual active frames are equivalent to a block window, I think this one is definitely a very powerful pick, and a 0 frame startup parry on a power sword is very strong, and I don't think I can rightfully put the Xenophase above it when the Xenophase is stuck with balance, even if the perk effect's quite strong. So I'd say this one is a little over Xenophase and probably tied with the block power sword, but that's definitely where I want to put this one. Next one we have here is the Lord Executioner's Axe Hammer. This thing is pretty damn fun. I'm kind of torn on where I'd put this. This one gives you a replacement on the Aftershock, where instead of a normal slam, you have a giant spinning attack. The spinning attack is pretty good. Like, the radius on that is fat. You'll be able to catch enemies you would never expect to actually catch, even the ones that are like right behind you with Chaos Spawn. And I'd say overall, as far as like fun is concerned, this is an S tier pick. Like, this is a super fun weapon. And as far as the actual like gimmick goes, I think the gimmick is pretty effective. Now I'm kind of torn because part of me wants to put this up in the A tier, but I don't think it's quite as strong as these other options. Like, it's a pretty good option for a block weapon, but I think the block hammer is still a little bit better if you're playing with it more. Maybe I'll put it in the top of B. You know what? We'll put it in A. We've been pretty nice today on some of these weapons. I think I'll put it in the bottom of A. I think Lord Executioner's Axe is pretty strong. It's just not like blowing my mind in strength like the Salamander's Power Sword would, but I would say it's probably deserving an A just compared to other hammers in the game, and is definitely way better than the other heroic option here with Storm's Dominion we'll get into later. Next weapon here is the Deathwatch Power Fist D tier. This thing sucks. This thing, there's no reason to use this in the entire game over the other relic tier options. The Melt Blast effect is just worse than your actual charge attack. It is a balanced parry window, which also sucks. And the damage here is pretty good on your strength, but it's still weaker than the other relic tier balance option. And the only reason this weapon is good is because the Power Fist itself is good, but it's not actually because the heroic variant does anything for you. There is no reason to actually use this unless you want to have a Melta attack. It needs huge buffs. And honestly, this is like an embarrassingly bad heroic weapon. I'm going to put this in D tier. It's more functional than it was in the public test server, but that's not really saying much. I'm putting it all the way down the bottom. Next weapon here is the Wrapped Bolt Sniper Rifle S tier. This is the best bolt sniper rifle in the entire game. If you hit every single headshot, you will have infinite ammo on this, and also the headshot damage on this is absurd. You will one-shot like half the enemies in the game. It is a super fun weapon to use. Now, they did nerf it from the PTS back on like patch 11 to no longer give you ammo from stuff like Versatile Precision or Reloaded Restoration in the actual weapon perk tree. That does kind of suck, but even with that, this weapon's still a top tier pick. I think Wrapped Bolt Sniper Rifle is super fun to use and a great option, and definitely up in the S for me. Now, the next weapon here is the Wrapped Instigator. This weapon is by far the best Instigator bolt carbine in the game. I don't think it's quite as effective as the... Actually, no, I might actually put this in S. I think this is another one where like the heroic variant is just a strict power increase over every other option, and because of that, I would put it up in the S. And the heroic Instigator fits very well into like the best sniper builds in the game, and also some of the best Vanguard builds in the game, and because of that, I would put both of these in the S tier. Next weapon here is the brand new Combi Flamer. This weapon needs buffs. I am not a huge fan of the Combi Flamer. I think it is okay. Well, you know, I like the weapon. Okay, let's be clear. I like the weapon. The Flamer effect is cool. I just don't think this weapon actually does anything particularly better than the other bolt carbines do. And this weapon is strong, but the main reason this weapon is strong is because bolt carbines in Space Marine 2 are like S tier weapons. It's just that the Pyroblaster effect is kind of redundant on a weapon that is already incredibly potent at close range, and because of that, I'd probably put it in the B. Like, you're not going to feel terrible using this. It is definitely a good option in the game. It's just not really like going to blow your mind, and the Pyroblaster portion is super underwhelming, so I'd probably put it here after playing with it more. Next weapon here is the Chains of Duty Heroic Heavy Bolter, S tier. This is the best heavy bolter in the game. Actually, I would go as far as say this is the best heavy weapon in the game. It'll give you a fencing parry window. This weapon has no charge up speed for its max fire rate on the heavy bolter. The contested health recovery on this is top tier. The DPS is very strong. Patch 13 also buffed up body shot damage on every bolter weapon, including this one. And the biggest downside of heavy in Space Marine 2 is the balanced parry window, because balanced parry windows on that class will just animation lock you sometimes and get you killed against certain parry timings, and this one circumvents that entirely. If you are struggling with Chaos Spawn at all, just take a Chains of Duty. And also these days, we have Chains of Duty with the Heroic Plasma. You can take both, and they fit each other perfectly. So Chains of Duty, S tier for sure. One of the best heavy weapons in the game. I think the only competition this would ever have would be like the Heroic Plasma here, but I think Chains of Duty is better. Next weapon here is the White Scars Chain Sword, S tier. This is the best chain sword in the game in my opinion. This thing has the Fury of Jagoras effect, where you can stack up to 3 block charges, where the second one does a little bit less damage than a normal block charge, but the third one gives you more damage overall. It is a 12 strength, 8 speed weapon, making it incredibly fluid to use, and I think the White Scars Chain Sword really just kind of replaced every other chainsword for me in this game. It is a super strong effect, and also as of like patch 12 plus, you can swap heroic skins around, so you're not stuck with a White Scars skin the entire time, so it actually looks pretty cool on like any build you want. And White Scars Chainsword, I think this is like a top pick for like a first purchase, and for that reason I put it up in the S tier. I think it's a very powerful weapon, and I think the moment I saw this, and like the Saber Interactive said they were bringing back the Artificer Block Sword from like last year as a heroic weapon, I knew it was going to be strong. Next weapon here is the brand new Salamander Melter Rifle. I like this weapon, okay? I know a lot of you guys don't, but I like this weapon. It has a base damage increase of like 10% over the normal Melter Rifle portions. I don't think it's top tier. I'll be clear, I don't think it's top tier. I think the charge up sound effect just sounds cool, and because of that, it makes me feel like the weapon is doing more than it actually is. But as far as a Melter Rifle goes, I think it's a pretty okay side grade to the other ones. I don't think any of the Melter Rifles are like up in the S tier. I think the range Melta is like probably probably a bit better, but this one is still pretty good. I probably put like B tier alongside the Combi Flamer. It could use some buffs, but like I don't feel, betrayed by using it. Now, the next weapon here is Death's Grasp. This is the first heroic Power Fist we had, and this one is way better than the Deathwatch Power Fist. It will give you a 200% increase to your light attack damage and give you gun strikes on every single execute you do. This will give you like a free gun strike opportunity, but your charge attack damage is cut in half and is a fencing parry window. I think this one is actually pretty good. I think as far as fencing power fists go, this is the best fencing weapon in the game for that variant, or the weapon archetype of the power fist, and it's really not a bad choice at all. I've seen some people not like this one, but I actually think this is like the most noob friendly weapon in the entire game. If you are brand new to Space Marine 2, I would probably recommend you get this one first to like level up your bulwarks or your assault, because once you have armor reinforcement on those classes, get you armor back on every non-finisher gun strike, this weapon just kind of carries you through everything, and you don't have to like charge up your charge attacks at all. You can just light attack spam. Super easy, super fluid to use. I actually like this one quite a bit, even if I think it's a bit boring once you learn the game a bit more. But I would say up here in the A, Death's Grasp is definitely a strong option. The next weapon here is Storm's Dominion. This one's C tier. It is just a fencing hammer with like a gimmicky shock effect on the aftershocks. I don't think this one is very strong. I know a lot of people like this weapon, but every single other Thunderhammer, from like the Lord Executioner's Axe to the Relic Tier Block to the Relic Tier Balance, they're all better than this one. They do way more damage. The aftershocks on those are going to actually kill the enemy. This one's taking time to actually do anything on with the shock area. And the only reason I would take this is if I'm trying to use a fencing hammer, but fencing hammers aren't very strong in the first place, so I'm putting this one down C. Next weapon here is the Deathwatch Stalker Bolt Rifle. This one gives you an Auspex scan on 4 consecutive body shots, and the gun portion here is kind of like a mix between a rate of fire and the normal like ammo capacity one. I kind of like this one. I think the perk effect for the Auspex is pretty nice. Now, this weapon does like fucking lie to you and tricks new players into thinking the Auspex scan is the same as a normal Auspex scan on the tactical class. They are actually separate effects that will stack, and they stack multiplicatively. So if you want to use it that way, you definitely can. The Deathwatch Stalker Bolt Rifle is by no means a bad weapon. It's just that the Deathwatch Stalker Bolt Rifle, the Auspex effect, the consecutive body shots, those don't work properly at the moment, where if you miss any shot, or if you have like a different damage instance from a grenade in between your 4 shots, it will reset the consecutive shots you're trying to pull off, which is super shitty. And because of that, I probably put it down in the C tier for now, maybe B. I don't think it's like a terrible weapon. I think on the tactical, it actually has some use case scenarios, and I know a lot of people like this thing, but I don't think it's that strong. I don't feel like I'm betrayed by using it, but it's definitely, I don't feel like it's pushing up to these, to be honest. Fuck it, we'll put it in B. I think it's an okay weapon. It's an okay weapon. Next weapon here is Retribution's Bequest. This one is the Heroic Heavy Bolt Pistol. It's the highest gun strike damage in the entire game. If you headshot a reinforcement calling enemy while you have this weapon, you will just one-shot them, and body shots will interrupt the reinforcement calls immediately. This one is super nice. The actual per shot damage here is also quite high, though the overall ammo economy is pretty shit. And I'd say this one can go up in the A tier. I think it's a pretty good pick. If you're going for a Gunstrike build, it is very strong, and I've never really felt betrayed by using this weapon. I'm saying betrayal a lot, but the point is, like, I've never felt bad about using this weapon. Like, every time I brought it with me, it has done something. And against enemies like Chaos Spawn that for whatever reason hate being interrupted in the reinforcement calls, it is super clutch sometimes. Just make sure you have a better primary of this weapon to recover contested health, because this weapon's a little bit awkward for that. The next weapon here is the Argent Edge. This is the best heroic in the entire game. This weapon is fucking cracked. The Argent Edge will stagger an enemy on every single parry to give you a gun strike opportunity. That is absurdly effective in this game. It's kind of hard to like fully explain how good this weapon actually is until you play with it, because you're like, oh, what? I just get a free gun strike on every parry? Doesn't that happen anyways? No. In Space Marine 2, there are multiple parry combos from stuff like Raveners or melee Terminators that you cannot interrupt for a gun strike on the first parry, and this one will do that every single time. And the only downside to that is that this weapon has a block active frame, but 0 frame startups, just like the Salamander Power Sword, are very strong in Space Marine 2, and having half the active frames does not matter that much. This weapon is one of the best melee weapons in the entire game. As far as fencing weapons go, I think this is just the best fencing weapon in Space Marine 2, period. And any build it's on is going to benefit on like Sniper, Vanguard even. Vanguard's probably the worst for this, but even on Vanguard, it's still quite strong. And on top of all of that, this weapon also does free damage on a perfect parry. So a really strong pick. Argent Edge, S tier for sure. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. Next weapon here is also S tier. The Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle. This weapon is the de facto best in slot in patch 14 for both tactical and tech marine. This is just a better version of the heavy bolt rifle in pretty much every single way, because you have all the benefits of one of the better bolter guns in the game currently on top of a gigantic fucking grenade launcher attached to it. And grenades in Space Marine 2, they are peak. They are incredible. They will recover your contested health in like one shot. They will take you from zero, or like, you know, from almost your entire white bar to full in a single blast. They will do tremendous AoE damage. And if you stack this on tactical with Auspex Scan, you can just obliterate like a boss. You can obliterate every guy around them. It does a ton of damage. And in Siege mode especially, this is a top tier pick, but even in the operation, it's just the best now because Pyroblaster Burn on Auspex got nerfed. And this fits perfectly into the tactical and tech marine. The only class is kind of bad on is the heavy. That's because the heavy's got better options like the Chains of Duty, and he doesn't worry about that contested health recovery as much because he's a gigantic tank. But Deathwatch Heroic Heavy Bolt Rifle, I think this is the second best heroic in the entire game right now, and definitely deserves to be up in the S. I'll tell you what it doesn't deserve to be up in the S though, and that is the next one here with the Ultima Ratio. This is the heroic Omniscient Axe. It got buffed this patch. It still sucks. This weapon is fucking dog shit. You are better off taking the balanced Omniscient Axe every single time pretty much. It is just a terrible effect. The whole thing about this is to buff up your Omniscient Rush attack to like one-shot guys, but the balanced one already one-shots guys, and the balanced one also one-shots entire hordes with the overcharge, or like your shock AoE that you do on the Omniscient Axe. It is just a much better weapon. And if you're taking a fencing weapon on the Tech Marine, you're just going to take Argent Edge. So Ultimate Ratio are really, really trash. And not quite as trash as the Deathwatch Power Fist, but definitely not good. Final one here is the Encarmine Axe. I think this one, I put an S last time. I think I might put this in S again. I think this one is just as good as the other block power axe. This one allows you to store up your power backstep, which doesn't sound that good initially, but being able to store up a power backstep to like AoE a horde with gigantic cleaving potential, that is actually quite strong. And this weapon also can use discharge to great effect because of that. And also the speed of this weapon is a bit faster on the block axe, so in some cases it is better for horde control. And because it's up here as a side grade to the best option for the base weapon, I think it is up in the S tier here. It might actually be a little bit better in some cases, but that is pretty much all there is that I have to say about the heroic weapons in Space Marine 2 patch 14. You guys let me know what you think about the heroic weapons in this game. You know, there is some stuff I might move around here, like, you know, if I thought about it a bit more, if like you asked me like in the middle of the moment, but I think for the most part, this is my opinion on every single one and where I'd rank them accordingly. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. And I also want to mention before I even finish this off that if you guys want to use a weapon like the Deathwatch Power Fist or the Ultima Ratio or Storm's Dominion, don't look at a tier list and say like, oh my god, they put it in S tier, so I have to use the S tier option. This one's only A tier. How dare he put it in B tier? I can't use that now. Use whatever you want. Like, none of these weapons are particularly dog shit, like overall, I should say. They're just dog shit in comparison to other weapon options in the game. It's not to say they're unusable, because I think you could take any weapon into this, or any weapon here, into absolute difficulty and do just fine. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that, especially if you're a new player. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. If you want to watch me live to ask you questions about the game or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description. I'll also have a link to my community Discord. And as always, thank you for watching. Take it easy. Bye.